Hello and welcome back to the Too Much Time on Our Hands podcast. It's part 2, and like we said, it's the following week. If you add an extra week on that, it's the following week. There's been a week in between. Shut up. Anyway, so we are going to do part 2 of our Alien deep dive. So if you're sitting out there listening to us live, or you little handies out there, that's what I've decided the people that listen to our podcast are now called, the handies. And if you're sitting there listening, watching us live, the little handies out there, give us a wave, everyone, with your little handies for the handies. Excellent. And if you're listening on the podcast, a load of pods just went up to all our little handies out there that like to listen to us not live. Anyway,
would those people just be Eries?
Yeah, they're still handies because we're too much time on our hands.
I just got it.
Yeah,
the handies.
The handies, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Okay.
I decided I wasn't going to run it past everyone. Just go for it.
Yeah. Just went for it.
Joining us tonight, we have
Executive
Russ.
decision.
Executive decision. Russ, how you out there?
All right, thank you.
Do you think we should get handies t-shirts? Tom, how you doing?
Yeah, good. And yes, I think we should get handies t-shirts. I mean,
I agree.
There's going to be lots of people saying, "Do you mean?" and us going, "No, we don't mean that.
No.
Too Much Time on Our Hands podcast." So we should probably get some like flyers printed up so that there's all the information about handies there.
We're in year 6 and we've just come up with a name for both our listeners, the handies. So,
the handies.
Yeah,
yes.
Love it. Mm-hmm. Mr. Duncan, how are you doing, sir?
All right. I mean, we've got a hustle. We haven't done any hustling, so we've got a hustle, and this sounds like a good hustle.
Yeah.
To get t-shirts, some merch with handies, and handies off my rust tits.
The ultimate handies. Yeah. Like, if we do Patreon, that's going to be the top tier level, right?
I'll give all you handies a double baby.
A satisfying handy.
Yeah. That's one satisfying
I'm all right then.
Good, Duncan.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm looking forward to hearing more about Alien, this film that I've never seen. Is it a bit like there's a TV series that was on fairly recently? And what I've heard so far, it sounds a little bit like that, except obviously not as good. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about it, and yeah, I guess we'll find out, won't we, Tom?
Now we will indeed. We will indeed.
Yeah, Tom. So part 2 of Alien Deep Dive. Tom, take it away.
Thank you very much, and thanks very much for everyone tuning in to the second part of this. So in the first part, we covered basically the sort of production of it, the sort of conception of it, interesting things about plots and monster design and all that kind of stuff. And there's probably like 2 major bits that I think kind of need to be covered after this. Is obviously Ellen Ripley as a character, but I also want to look at what is the pivotal twist, I imagine, of the film for most people, which is Ash's betrayal. And
I mean, you were going to say when it's the cat in the cupboard.
It's more of a jump scare,
twist.
Isn't it?
Yeah, it's more of a plot point. But you know what I mean. It's not hardly M. Night Shyamalan. I think is how his name. I've never ever pronounced his last name right.
I think you're pretty close there, Tom.
Is that right?
M. Night Shyamalan.
M. Night Shyamalan. Oh, brilliant! Did it?
But it's an N, not an M at the end. Yeah.
M. Night Shyamalan.
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 Got it. You nailed it. You nailed it first time. Let's move away. Handies out there, don't look.
The handies don't care. So I mean, look, we may get through this and Ellen all together, but we may end up doing a part 3 at some point.
Wow.
Because the Ash's stuff brings up all the other parts of Alien. So, for example, actually no, let's start from the beginning. Nostromo is awoken by a distress signal, or at least what Mother, the ship's AI, refers to as a distress signal, or is telling the crew is a distress signal. And according to company policy and company contracts, they have to go down and investigate it because it could be intelligent life, or it could be humans. And so part of their contract is to go and investigate, especially if it's a signal of unknown origin, which this is what is being told to them by the ship's computer. There's a bit of argument. The engineers, Parker and Brett, want full shares of whatever they might find down there, but they say they're not going to go down unless that gets sort of sorted out. And Ash, the ship's science officer, is very vociferous about saying, we have to go down. It's in your contract. You'll lose all share rights if you don't go down. So almost from the beginning, Ash is painted as a company man, someone who knows the contracts inside and out. But other than that, seems a relatively unremarkable character. So they land the ship and what I love about that sort of whole thing is that landing a ship in the alien universe seems to be an incredibly dangerous thing to try. The whole crew has to pull together. The engineer, they're actually amazed that they managed to do it. They're another happy landing, but it actually, it breaks one of the support struts. The engineers spend most of the time they're on this planet LV-426 trying to fix it. And then the away team, the captain, the navigation officer, and the executive officer, Dallas, Lambert, and Kane, respectively, all go out to the source of the signal, and they find the alien ship, where obviously they lower Kane down into the hold. He gets impregnated with the alien and comes back. In the meantime, Ripley realizes that the distress signal is actually a warning, and she says, we need to go out there and tell the crew that have gone out. Whereas Ash goes, what's the point? Like, by the time they get out there, they'll realize it's, and they'll come back. Like, basically just saying, we don't want to interrupt it because he knows what's going to happen. And as we sort of get through the film, blah, 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 people get picked off by the alien. Eventually, it's just Ash, Ripley, Dallas, and Ash, Ripley, Parker, and Lambert who are left. 4 of the original 7. And it's becoming painfully apparent that Ash has been doing very little to help the crew and a lot to help the alien survive. And Ripley is wondering why Ash is being so useless and unhelpful through everything that they're trying to do. And she goes to consult Mother because she's now the ranking officer. She's able to access the central AI and finds Special Order 937, which is science officer eyes only. Alien life form is the priority. All other priorities are ascended. Crew expendable. And effectively finds out that Ash has been keeping the alien safe, and it was his responsibility to reroute the Nostromo, to make sure it picked up the distress signal, and to bring this life form back. What isn't apparent up to that point is discovered very shortly after this, when Ash tries to kill Ripley to cover up what she's found. When she pushes him incredibly hard against a wall and cracks his skull, instead of blood, there is white fluid coming out.
It's full of cum.
He is young, dumb, full
absolutely
of cum.
stuffed.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely chock full of.
She's the only one that doesn't realise that Ash was actually the ship's buckdoll.
Yeah, absolutely, and he starts to malfunction, tries to kill Ripley, and as she is rescued by her fellow crewmates, he gets hit around the head. And it is discovered that he is actually an android, and turns out to be an android sleeper agent who has been sent aboard by the company. In fact, it's earlier referenced in the film by Dallas that Dallas had shipped out with a different science officer 3 or 4, or maybe even 5 times, I think he says. And then 2 days before they left on this current journey, he was swapped out for Ash, obviously a company plant.
Mm-hmm.
They rejig Ash after completely demobilizing him and pulling him to pieces. They actually rebuilt him slightly so that he can still speak to them, and he says the fateful warning of, I can't lie to you about your chances. You still don't understand what you're dealing with. This is a perfect organism, unclouded by morality, or unclouded by petty delusions of morality. It's a born survivor. You can't kill it. It's not going to happen. It will kill you before. Anyway, blah blah blah. And they realize that the company obviously doesn't give a shit about them, that it only cares about the alien, so they decide to destroy the vessel. Anyway, there's no point kind of getting to the end, because obviously what happens is everyone apart from Ripley and the alien and the cat die. She detonates the engines. She flies off in the escape ship, and then blasts the alien out the airlock, blasts it with the engine, and obviously then disappears and falls into a hypersleep for 57 years. What we need to talk about, though, is that Ash's betrayal is almost the first act of this monolithic entity, the company, Weyland-Yutani, that becomes a almost always the big bad in most of the films. Apart from, I think, Alien Resurrection, because by that point it's the US, or like whatever they are, the USMC military or something like that. They're the ones in charge of the cloning program. It's a military-backed program.
They get like referenced in Resurrection, don't they?
They do.
Like,
but it's like,
I remember.
Yeah, it's like
read
200
about them.
years in the future, isn't it, or something after all of this time. But Aliens and Alien 3, the company is the, is like, it's like the idea that it's such a big conglomerate that it basically is the government. You know what I mean? It's such a big, it's just the company. There's nothing else. But I guess that's the point, really. So Ash's betrayal in Alien is a pivotal moment in the film that adds that layer of complexity to the narrative, introducing a very sinister element, explaining quite a lot of the almost mysterious behaviour of Ash, the impatience he shows at almost every turn with his interactions with the crew, and also underlining some of his more bizarre behaviour that, at face value, after, for example, the chestburster comes pouring out of Kane, he screams to the rest of the crew not to touch it. Don't touch it! Don't touch it! And at the time you think he's just trying to protect them because they don't, they don't know what that is. They're just like, Jesus Christ, don't touch it! Don't touch it! It might be dangerous. But actually, what he's, it's very clear when you look at it in hindsight. He's literally, that's his first example of protecting the alien. There's also that point where he's looking on an ultrasound screen at the facehugger's tube down Kane's throat, and he's almost looking at it with a almost soon-to-be father, kind of fatherly sort of like, he's willing this thing to survive, to keep it safe, like to bring it along. So I think why Ash's betrayal is such a significant point in not just this film, but the knock-on effect it has is broken down into several pieces. First of all, a very simple thing that I think we can all agree is a very prevalent thing in our lives, just as well as anyone else in the alien universe, is corporate interests versus human lives. Ash's betrayal is rooted in the conflict between the crew's well-being and the interests of Weyland-Yutani Corporation. And as the science officer aboard the Nostromo, as a human being, from the outside, you think that he is there to help and serve the crew, but is clearly secretly programmed to prioritize the retrieval of the alien specimen over the lives of the crew. And this becomes a strong theme for the entire Alien cinematic universe at that point, those first few films, is that it's always about it's always about company interests totally outweighing the interests of human employees or just humans in general. The alien is such a dangerous organism, and yet the company is almost single-minded in its approach. It's very easy to think that Burke in Aliens is just operating out of self-interest, but the thing is, he's got access to all the databases. He must have. He finds out the coordinates of the ship. We know now, based on Alien Isolation, that in that narrative, that the Nostromo's black box was retrieved. That the way that the company bought Sevastopol Station to retrieve that information. It's been in company archives for a long time, and their pursuit of that organism has been, a prevalent goal. Maybe not something that's discussed openly across the board tables, as you might imagine, but it's certainly something that drives. It's the narrative drive. Burke is operating in the interest of the company, and he basically sentenced the 157 colonists to death by sending them out there because he already knew that it was going to happen, and he even said, those things are worth millions to the bioweapons division. We've got to bring this thing back. They've been almost like kind of, he doesn't need to say it, but they've been looking for it for years. Like 60 years ago, we had people trying to look for this thing. We tried again with the Sevastopol Station only 35 years ago. So this constant drive. And of course, that leads on to the next part of it, which is the android nature and the deception. The revelation that he's an android and not a human adds that layer of deception into the film, that the company, doesn't even want to send a human to do that work, that it's just a programmed android because they have the technology, they can. His lack of empathy, concern for the crew is just underscoring the sort of dehumanizing effect of corporate interests on the pursuit of scientific discovery, which I think is the real antithesis in his character, is that as a man of science, he's not interested in preserving human life. He is purely interested in fulfilling his programming. Sorry, Duncan, you were going to.
The sending of the android, apart from being very important to aliens, is also indicative of the fact that the company knew that the android would be safe from the alien, because
Yeah.
it's not organic life. So why would the alien bother with it? If it doesn't pose a threat, it's not going to. We're pretty sure that the alien is not going to harm an android, because there's no reason. It's not food. It's not biomass to be absorbed or anything, or
And it
you
can't
can't
be a
hatch
carrier.
anything in it. Yeah, so it's just there.
Well, weird. Shouldn't they look up to androids, since androids technically created them, or an android technically recreated them?
God.
Yeah, we don't count that, do we? Like we don't. I mean, we don't. Like we can all agree that it's a terrible idea that Michael Fassbender created the aliens, right? Like that's just it's so poo bobbins.
Yeah.
As an idea.
So Jack, who is also something of an alien connoisseur, went into tiny reference in a deleted, I think, scene where they were bought out by Walmart, which is interesting.
Really?
Kind of plays
Nice.
into that.
Oh, in Alien Resurrection.
Is it in Alien Resurrection, that one? Is it? That kind of tracks, doesn't it, with what Alien Resurrection is, which is incredibly Gen X. And Bishop at the end of Aliens would probably disagree that aliens don't harm androids.
Well,
Yeah.
if
No,
indeed
because
he is an android,
Yeah. Yeah.
because he gets hit by the
Yeah.
metal pole and his half his face and his ear is all kind of hanging off. Yeah, it's a
yeah,
difficult
I know
one.
you get he gets split, but
He also poses a threat to
You
the
could-
alien, I suppose, as well as the other side.
Yeah.
Of it. Yeah.
I
Well, it's quite unclear
suspect
like
that
how
all-
much of a big deal that would be. Like we don't really know much about androids in this. You know, can he just download into another body and it's like no worries, or is that actually something close to death for him? Like we don't really know much about how
Oh,
they
what
really
when
work.
the real Bishop, like the Bishop android in Aliens, gets ripped in half?
Yeah, like is it just like nips? I've got to re-download into a new body now, or is that him actually dying, or whatever the equivalent is for an android?
Interesting one, isn't it? Because in Alien 3, he says, "I could be rebuilt, but I'll never be top of the line," which I think he's kind of saying I could be rebuilt, but like I'd rather just
Yeah,
like,
but then
I'd
that also
rather
suggests that
not
they
go through
can't
that.
just like take his consciousness and put it in another.
Yeah, which again is
shell.
another weird one, isn't it? Like surely it's a component, like whatever serves as his brain / memory / whatever personality construct he is as an artificial intelligence should be able. Anyway, yes, no, you're absolutely right. So interesting you say that actually though, Duncan, about the that you can almost imagine like what would it be like if Ash had succeeded and the alien had killed off all the other crew members and it was just him and the alien on board the ship. Like literally as the ship gets back to Earth, it's just
It's like, well, this is awkward.
yeah, this is awkward. It's just
Do you wanna-
it's like
Play Uno or something.
yeah, technically. I mean, that's the thing. Like, if the alien's not going to attack him, like, it's going to be a very creepy derelict vessel, sort of, that appears back at Antarctica traffic control, yeah, that's an interesting one. But I guess there's actually a kind of a parallel, even though he is an android. Like, Ash is often, I think, seen in some analysis as a protector, like as I said, sort of an expectant father, and kind of nurturing. But actually, I think when he betrays the crew, I mean, he's actively betraying the crew most of the film anyway, but when he actually betrays the crew and tries to kill Ripley to cover up his special order, his real predatory nature is, I think, kind of revealed. And actually there's a lot of parallels between him and the alien. The alien is just trying to survive, and Ash, by turning on the crew and trying to kill Ripley, is just trying to survive and make sure that his orders can carry out, because obviously without his orders and being protected, he technically has no purpose. And I guess that's the sort of android kind of thing, isn't it? Without a purpose, what is the point of me being alive? And actually, I touched on this earlier, I think in the previous part, where Ash's malfunction is actually, I think, him having trouble with the conflict of his orders. They say that the earlier androids were always a bit twitchy, but behavioral inhibitors stop androids of Bishop's generation from doing anything. I think it's that Ash knows he shouldn't harm humans, but when Ripley discovers his special order, I think the conflict begins within his programming of, well, I know I shouldn't harm her, but at the same time, she now knows what my secret order that I've been told not to tell anyone is. So the only way she's not going to tell people is if I kill her, but I shouldn't really do that. And the malfunction is, it's very strange. There's also a lot of connotations about the him using a magazine, stuffing it down her throat. There's actually some people who analyze that as, some pundits, observers who analyze that as, Ash is obviously an android, so he's never going to be able to have sex or procreate or anything like that. And actually the only way he's going to penetrate anyone is by doing something as blunt as rolling a magazine up and, penetrating Ripley down the mouth in the same way that the facehugger obviously penetrated Kane down the mouth. And people say there's parallels there, that this is him living out a sort of almost a kind of a power fantasy over Ripley, that obviously he would never be able to do this in real life because he's ill-equipped, let's just say.
I would say it's indirect harm. It is a weird way of doing it. I don't think that's some people. I suspect some people over-reading an android.
If that's the case, no, I don't think that's over-reading at all. These films are stacked with these kind of like analogies, and the sheer amount of relevance of sex to these films is crazy, even from the design to what the aliens are doing, and not sex. That's probably making it a bit more pleasant than it actually is. But I think, like, so if it's an indirect thing, why doesn't he just hit it with a pole or something like that? So like that's still indirect in the same sense. Whereas
It's like
shoving a magazine is
could be,
very deliberate.
He hurls her against walls, almost, almost as if he's trying to subdue her so that she is submissive to, so he doesn't go for a coup de grace. It's very clear that he's strong enough to just break her neck if he wants to. Like he grabs Parker, even while trying to force the magazine down Ripley's neck. He grabs Parker like literally on the nipple, with one hand, and Parker screams in agony. And when Ash falls onto him with the head flopping back over his neck after he's been hit by Lambert, it's still very apparent that Parker's losing that fight because the android is physically so much stronger.
I mean, I'm just reading an article now about how, and apologies to anyone, there are allegories obviously to sexual assault.
Yes,
throughout
100%.
the whole film, and
Totally, yeah.
apologies to anyone that might actually trigger horrible thoughts or memories of, but it's fairly prominent throughout the film and fairly obvious throughout the film as well.
Absolutely. It's the face huggers. The whole way that happens is an incredibly violating process anyway. And of course, the then eruption from within is there's a lot going on there. Also, as well, the images of the biomechanoid that were the inspiration for the alien. The body of the biomechanoid is almost a hypersexualized image of a slender female body, but covered with the tubes and circuitry of an almost, if you look up the biomechanoid picture by Geiger, you'll see the long head and the chitinous jaws and all that kind of stuff, and then this very slender sexualized body and all the biomechanical stuff around them. It's very confusing, to look at those images, because there are so many things that appeal and so many things that repulse, and I think that's a real core thing. Ash.
One last thing.
Sorry.
The fact that the ship's called Mother as well.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the computer they talk to, isn't it?
Yeah.
The ship's computer. Sorry, yeah.
Who has that one? Yeah. So this is again another point. Ash and Mother are in concert. They are working together, whether it seems or not. Mother is not looking after the crew. In fact, Mother has been very clearly programmed to not help at all. Dallas is constantly fed insufficient data whenever he asks Mother a question. Insufficient data, insufficient data. Obviously, things that he has typed in the past, saying, what are my chances? Insufficient data. And Ash's response to what is the alien doing, what is the face hugger implanting, what is it feeding him, etc., is always it's either a very an over complicated scientific, well, he's replacing his cells with polarized silicon, which makes him one tough son of, like things that people would just be like, right, whatever, almost insignificant information, or Mother's still collating. And he says that 3 or 4 times throughout the film at very critical points. What does Mother think we should do next? Well, she's still collating. And, it's that phrase that actually triggers Ripley to go and speak to Mother herself to find out what's going on. Because as the science officer, he's just been, people have just let him get on with it and kind of talk to Mother and almost obscure the fact that Mother's been programmed not to help them. I find that whole thing very interesting because people see Mother with such a brooding name as an overseer for them. It's almost a protective influence, but she's not. She's absolutely not. She's working with Ash to make sure that she provides no help, and he's not going to provide any help. And the help he does is going to be engineered enough that it's not real help. A case in point is. I'm sorry, I've just lost my place in my notes. So it's actually, I got this the wrong way around. I put Crew's betrayal and loss of trust. It actually should be the other way around: loss of trust and Crew's betrayal. You see Ash's sort of almost stock with the crew declining as the film progresses, starting off as someone that Dallas kind of goes, Parker, will you listen to the man? Like, he's a source of information. He's going to tell us like the right thing to do. Dallas also trusts Ash quite implicitly, while they're having their conversations about what should we do, should we, and Ash develops the little motion tracker that works. So, but you can see everyone else around Ash is just very slowly beginning to sort of almost pull away from him and kind of almost like questioning, well, what are you doing? Like, you're not actually helping at all. Ripley obviously is the most prominent. She's the one that we see most often actually directly questioning him. Parker doesn't seem to like him at all because he either corrects him or steals his spot at the dinner table. Kane and Ash actually at the beginning of the film are seen to have a rather friendly relationship. You can actually see off camera, well, not off camera, but like off focus, them smiling at each other and joking when Parker and Brett first go, I just forgot, like, we should talk about the Cher situation. Like they share a friendly smiley look at each other, like, we've heard this before, as if they are almost kind of friendly on friendly terms. But that erodes, and it does. It whittles away. Ripley clearly doesn't trust him. Lambert obviously doesn't trust him either. By that sort of point, even though she at points feels like the most clueless kind of member, or like most real, not necessarily clueless, but kind of almost real. Like, I feel like if I was in that situation, I would not be a hero. I would be panicked and scared and Lambert about the whole situation. I genuinely think, fearing for your life is that thing. But that loss of trust obviously is completely underscored by the revelations that he has been actively working against them. And it shatters the trust amongst the remaining crew members to the point where they just realize that all is lost, that the only way they're going to get out of this is if they destroy the ship and get onto the escape shuttle. And I guess that's the kind of thing, isn't it, is that if you put yourself in the shoes of the character and you realize at that point that the company has actively been working against you the whole time to the point where they felt compelled to put an android sleeper agent on your ship, and you suddenly get to that point, like, all hope is lost. You are now in a desperate situation, and it's all because of this. There's a whole point in my mind about Ash as an extension of the alien, his android nature revealed through the violent actions against Ripley further blurs that kind of line I think that the Alien films are very good at, that blurred line between man and machine. You know, the alien itself is clearly biomechanical. It's you know, the way its body looks, it looks like an engineered organism. Obviously you have Bishop, who is very clearly an android and has no problem saying it, but because of Ash's actions is viewed by Ripley and other people who might have had bad experiences with androids in the past with mistrust. There's also that element that is explored a little bit further. I hasten to add that this is from Alien Isolation, but you have the working Joes that are advertised on a clear point of they don't look human. So you always know a working Joe, you know, that's good, that, you know, that it's a good thing that it doesn't look human. Whereas the other side of it is that Seegson, who make the working Joes, always say that the Weyland-Yutani models, while more advanced, are actually more scary because they're so human. They're almost more human than human.
Yeah.
And Samuels in it is very human and very compassionate, you know, and there's nothing duplicitous about him at all. But I think that's probably one of my favourite themes of all of the Alien films, and the one that is, I think, most prominent in Alien is that blurred line between what is human, because Ash is so good at being a human because he's programmed to be a human, but he's actually completely and utterly alien. He is an unknowable, almost unfathomable Cthulhian sort of nightmare. That he is. He looks like something familiar, but he isn't. And he is so unfamiliar that he's actively not interested in preserving your life in the favor of helping this absolutely unknown, unfathomable alien that he freely admits is unclouded by petty delusions of morality and compassion, you know, and he admires that. So, you know, it's an interesting one. Like, what do you guys think about that as making him this almost unknowable, you know, unfathomable abyss of kind of nightmare fuel?
Yeah, it's really, like, it's obviously it was a sort of a decision that was made. Like, he could have just been a human who was, you know, in the know and had been tasked with the company to do this. Like, that would have been easy to do, far cheaper on the effects budget. But yeah, the decision was made to make him specifically be an android. Yeah, because like I say, he's kind of closer to the alien than he is to the humans.
But they didn't know he was an android.
No.
Because isn't it where Ripley goes, it's the shock that he's an android.
Yeah. So they're obviously aware that androids exist,
actually,
but they didn't know he was one.
Yeah, I think that's where the real shock is. It's like we're dealing with one alien, and then suddenly we've found there is another non-human amongst
Absolutely.
us. But it's essentially a shapeshifter.
Yeah. Absolutely. And also, like, are androids mentioned before then?
I'm pretty sure they're
think
not.
So
No.
we don't in this world even know, when this came out, we don't even know that androids were a thing.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, boom. Like
I can't remember any mention
yeah.
of them.
Even if they are, it's a passing mention, right? So
Yeah,
like
and
androids,
certainly,
yeah.
even if there was no like, oh, and everyone knows how they look exactly like humans and could pass for a human if you didn't know one was one.
Yeah, it would be like mentioning that you were a man of God rather than putting like a priest collar on you or seeing you pray or something in an alien movie.
When they wake up at the start, he's in the
Looking in your direction.
hypersleep capsules.
Yeah, he
What
is.
is it hypersleep? It's called in Alien.
Yeah.
He's in there with them, which presumably he doesn't need.
But if you go back to the scene where he's hit round the head, it's not the surprise that he's an android or that there is an android. It's the surprise is Ash is an android.
Yeah.
Ash is a goddamn android. So from my point of view, I always watch that scene and I've always thought there's no surprise that androids exist to them. It's that Ash
Is the
android.
android.
Yeah, they're like, oh my god, Ash!
How-
It turns out that like this dude I thought was a dude is an android.
But
But
they know how
it
to
ties in
hook him up
perfectly.
later to talk to him, don't they? Like if they didn't know
Exactly.
androids were real, there's no way they'd be able to plug him
I'm
into a.
not
USB
saying
port.
they don't know androids are real. I'm saying we don't know androids
we
are real.
we
So
have
I'm,
no,
I'm,
Yeah, no, I
I'm
suppose.
saying that
no knowledge of it.
the surprise that they have that Ash is an android is actually a surprise of like, holy shit, like androids. There's another fucking sci-fi element in this
Yeah.
film.
Yeah,
And it's
right.
kind of like it's like there's another monster
Yeah,
because he
Yeah.
is fairly quickly from finding out he is an android. He goes to being like a disembodied head sitting in a pile of carbonara on the floor.
come say it. Ross.
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yes.
he sort of becomes another monstrous figure quite quickly.
That moment,
Well,
he,
with the tubes and everything, he also mimics the alien.
How amazingly nightmarish is it as well? Like that is perfect. Like
The
the idea, just the idea that they use this white liquid instead of like. Seen plenty of blood in this film already.
yeah.
So like, let's just change it up a bit and just they make it so nightmarish and so like over the top.
But also
it's
so
perfect.
clear. Like,
Yeah.
it's so clear, like how inhuman he is because
Yeah.
not, it's probably not even warm. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's probably just cold, gross, conductive fluid of some sort that just.
Yeah.
Or it might even just be hydraulic fluid, the stuff
Yeah.
that powers the servos that extend his arms and legs, and you just
It's
don't know.
Such a nice contrast to the rest of the film because we see alien blood, we see human blood, and we see lots of oil, and we see lots of grime. We see like a very grimy workplace, and there's this like clear fluid just spraying everywhere. This clear like white fluid. It's not clear, is it?
to
It's
me,
like
that's
milky.
actually one.
Yeah.
That whole bit is. That is probably the scariest bit of the movie. Really,
Yeah.
is just
When
because
he
suddenly
flips out.
because when he flips out. But I think he was about to flip out anyway.
Definitely
I
something
think he was
happened,
going to
like-
kill.
Yeah.
He was going to kill Ripley before she throws him. Or
like-
pushes him.
I think the most sort of lenient interpretation of that scene is that he was going to try and like subdue her and hide her somewhere. But
Not
I think
throw it to the
realistically,
alien,
on
probably.
a small ship where everyone's on edge anyway, he was probably going to kill her. Possibly try and make it look like the alien did it.
Yeah, it's a battle of wits, isn't it? And one of the best things about it, as you say, what's nightmarish about it is how violent that section is. There's violence, and up until then, it's very horror cinema, but it's very haunted house horror cinema. Someone dies, they die violently, but they don't die that violently. At that point, it
It
becomes a
suddenly
gore
becomes
flick.
slasher.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so violent, and you're so taken aback because you've not seen anything apart from the chestburster scene. Thinking about it, but you've not seen anything like that throughout the whole film, and then all of a sudden, like the whole camera's covered in white fluid.
And the fact that it takes 3 of them to do it.
Yeah,
It
Like, she is
it
going
takes
to die.
3 of them just to hold him back, and it takes a shock prod down the literally down his throat, or where his throat would be if he was human, to finally short him out and basically end his body's ability to fight back. I think I don't know kind of what his next steps were, because actually when Ripley reads that on Mother's screen, that Special Order 937, she sits back and then realizes he's standing next to her, and he goes, there is a good explanation. And you almost think to yourself, like, is he gonna, if she'd just gone, no, I've read it, fair dues, like, would he have just been like a compliant robot and kind of not harm her? There are some people who I've sort of read, kind of analysis of that scene going, it's not until she attacks him physically that he looks like he's going to attack her. And also, there's no injuries present on him until she pushes him. He's not sweating fluid or anything like that until after she's pushed him back against that wall really hard. And you can see him kind of... I mean, Ian Holm does a fucking fantastic job in this scene
he's amazing.
of looking like a malfunctioning android. Like, there are weird eye movements and neck movements that he does really, really well. And that bit where he gets hit by Parker around the back of the head with the oxygen canister, and suddenly, the head goes back, and the geysers geysers of white fluid start spraying out of his mouth, and he starts whooshing around the room and stuff, and then it goes for the other members of the crew. It happens very fast. It goes from I think it's only about 2 minutes from discovery to the hit round the back of the head, which causes all the white fluid to come spraying out of his mouth before his head gets knocked off. It's a whirlwind. Like, I would love to be able to go back and watch that scene without knowing what's coming again, you know, because all you think up to that point is he's behaving a bit weird. Like, he's not very helpful. Like, you know, you don't think definitely an android sleeper agent working against them and keeping that alien safe, you know, according to a company special order that he's been given. You just none of that. You just don't think any of that. There's a really interesting, you know, kind of thing about it. Physical transformation is something that Ash goes through, which is a real theme of this as well. Physical transformation, obviously. You know, the face hugger, when you first see it, you think it just leaps out. You know, you don't have any idea about what's happening, but then you realise it's got a very long proboscis. Is that the right word, Duncan? Proboscis? Like, very long proboscis that can come out of it. So there's this sort of, where does that all come from? You know, that it can actually where's that tube come from? Because they reference it several times. I don't think you actually properly see it in this film. You see it obviously in Aliens, in the little stasis.
You can ask the same thing about bees.
Oh, exactly.
Moths.
Bees and moths. Like, where the hell?
They just curl this thing.
It's amazing.
It's just curled up, and then it goes.
So it comes out. So the physical transformation, obviously the alien itself, physical transformation from a tiny chest burster, and we never really see anything apart from a discarded skin. That the alien has suddenly gone from 8 inches to 8 feet tall. Ash also goes through physical transformation. Like other machines, actually. Obviously, the Nostromo lands on LV-426 and is ruined slightly.
Isn't it? It's not Nostromo, is it? Isn't it? They've got a dropship.
No, so the Nostromo
that's
is the
in
ship.
Aliens. So in the first one, the Nostromo is the little bit, the tug ship, and then the massive thing is like an ore refinery or something.
Refinery,
I don't think it's even got a name. So that's what they detach from. So the Nostromo is the bit that does the driving, and that's what they detach and land.
And the little shuttle is called Narcissus, isn't it? It's the little tiny shuttle that they fly off in at the end. Nostromo goes through some physical transformation because obviously when they land, they break one of their landing supports. And they have to fix it, and they also lose a lot of visibility of their decks, like all the cameras and stuff like that. So the Nostromo physically changes as an environment. It's not a nice, safe environment anymore. It physically changes to become more horrifying. Dallas has a lot to answer for because Ripley is holding up them taking off because she's saying, well, we're blind on 3 of our decks, all the cameras aren't working, we've lost like circuitry, the lighting and all that kind of stuff. And there's a scene when Parker and Brett are off looking for the little, what they think is a chestburster sized alien. They find all the lighting out in this particular area, and they fix one of the boxes. So physical transformation of individuals and environment is something that is very prevalent. You know, the egg goes from being just an egg on the floor to containing the sort of almost the MacGuffin of the whole film. Not the MacGuffin, almost the point of inertia. Like the facehugger is the invasion of Kane's space and therefore the crew's safety. And Ash clearly goes through massive physical transformation in his reveal from, you know, not just a human to an android, to the point where it's not just that he has been shown to have circuitry or wiring or something like that. He literally loses his head, is still able to function. There's an element of body horror in there that he's still moving, still fighting, even though his head is dangling off his back. And then obviously the interrogation scene where they rebuild him, and you know, his mangled body is behind him and his arm is still moving, but his head is talking over here, and there's all that fluid and pipes and tubes all over the place. And yeah, physical transformation is massive, and obviously we see some of the worst of it in the later films. In in Aliens, we see the physical transformation of, especially with the director's cut, the colony from a happy place where people seem to be living relatively prosperous lives into a nightmare in the post-battle and post-alien invasion. Obviously, we see the physical transformation of people like Drake when they are sprayed with the acid blood of the aliens. We see the same thing happen to Hicks later on in the movie. Physical transformation of the atmosphere processor from heavy industrial environment to the absolute ninth circle of hell that we find all the colonists have been literally had their limbs broken to fit into. Can you imagine being stolen by an alien in the night, dragged into their hive, basically broken limbs and stuck onto a wall, a face hugger egg placed in front of you, like the nightmare? Or I mean, it's horror. Like, and you don't see this until you see then the physical transformation of the alien coming out of the last colonist left alive. It's just constant, over and over, physical transformation of people and things and environments. Even the prison in the third film is a quiet, calm place where nothing of interest happens, and then suddenly Ripley arrives and everything starts going to hell. Everyone starts getting picked off, killed. You know what I mean? It's just yeah. Physical transformation is everywhere, and it's used incredibly effectively with Ash. He becomes more terrifying the more physical transformation that he goes through. If anything, by the time they rewire his head, he's got nothing left to lose. He can be as horrifying and awful and cold and machine-like as he likes, because there's no cover to blow anymore.
He's not trying to deceive them anymore, is he? He's completely honest with them from that point on.
How do we kill it? You can't. You still don't.
But he's not trying to scare them or bullshit them or anything like that. He's just like, yeah. He's not emotional about it. There's no need for subterfuge anymore. So you may as well just be completely straight with them.
That's what's so awful about it. Like, it's just utterly cold.
Yeah, like that's like from their point of view, like they believe him. Like,
one of the nicest things about being human
screwed.
is the ability to sympathize, empathize, and show compassion to people going through bad times. The fact is that there is literally no comfort from Ash at all. He even smiles with sarcasm when he says, like, I can't lie to you about your chances, but you have my sympathy. And of course, what the fuck does that mean from a machine? Machine doesn't feel sympathy. He had no sympathy for them at any point. So the sympathy he's expressing at that point is completely redundant and completely false. He's not sympathetic to their plight. There is no sympathy from that cold, calculated machine, and there was no sympathy from the company either. They knew exactly what they were sending that crew into. So there's a interesting element. I'm sorry. If this is getting boring,
not at all. But we are definitely going to go into part 3 because we haven't even touched on Ripley yet.
Yeah, kind of a big one. Probably should look at that one. There's a nice kind of parallel between not parallel. So there's a conflict between survival instincts and programmed loyalty. Which I think is quite an interesting one. So Ash's actions prompt survival instinct in the crew, because obviously he's there as a sleeper agent to ensure that they encounter that signal, that they investigate it, that someone gets impregnated and gives birth to the alien. That's his programmed loyalty. Those actions instigate survival instincts, and some crew members are able to demonstrate incredible survival instinct, some more than others, to the point where you think Dallas is probably going to pull through because he's being painted as the hero of this film, but then dispatched just like that. But then what they have to do is the crew with their survival instincts end up are forced to confront the alien. But then later on in the film, the threat of their own crew member suddenly revealing himself to be a programmed individual who is not trying to survive, who is literally working against their survival instincts. And I really, really like that conflict. because the clash is between human survival instincts and Ash's programmed loyalty to the company. And that is a really tense dynamic, and it's very playful. It's very, very cool to see at points. There are points where Ash is not necessarily the person that you're looking at in the scene, but you should be looking at Ash in every scene he's in. There are moments that he betrays himself just slightly. There's a look that he gives Dallas when Dallas is going through his plan to go into the vent shaft. You can see Ash just very slyly looking at him kind of out of the corner of his eye and then back to the plan as if he knows it's going to fail. There's a moment earlier in the film which is a bit more easy to see that Ash obviously is zipping his stuff up when the away team are about to disappear off to try and find out where the signal's coming from. And he looks around and realizes that everyone else is finding it quite cold. And so he jogs on the spot, almost looking like he's trying to warm himself up. But he does it with such a way that he looks like he's almost trying to mimic a little bit snake-like. There's the scene when Kane starts to choke. Ash doesn't get up. Ash doesn't even move. Everyone else is straight up out of their chair as soon as he starts to choke. Ash doesn't move until Kane stands up and flips onto his back and lands on the table. That's when Ash gets up to move, because Ash knows what's coming. Ash knows that this is the start of what the warning told them about, that warning signal. He knows what's about to happen.
Yeah, like he doesn't know specifics necessarily, but like he's sort of aware that there is going to be an event of some sort.
The motherfucker is still chewing his cereal at the point where Kane is choking and convulsing and they're trying to force a wooden spoon into his mouth. It's only after he falls onto the table that he gets up. It's absolutely brilliant. Like, it's all these things that I now watch over and over again, and just watch Ash's looks at the people talking when he's not the focus of the scene. It's almost as if he's thinking of himself as some sort of marionette puppeteer. It's very interesting to see.
It's possible that androids are just smug pricks.
Yeah, well, quite a lot of them are.
They are in all the films.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why do you think your creators made you?
Oh God.
Oh no, why did you make us?
Over yourself.
Isn't it? Yeah. Why did your people make me? Because we can. How disappointing do you think that would be to hear from your creators? I quite like the David character in Prometheus, but I hate him now. I can't stand him. I think
the more I look back at those two films, and bearing in mind Covenant might be my least favourite film I've seen at the cinema.
Really, like ever.
Yeah. Like this, because there's and I've seen Morbius at the cinema, but I went into Morbius knowing that I thought that was going to be shit. I went into Alien Covenant kind of enjoying Prometheus, and then thinking this could be better than Prometheus at least, and being so disappointed. And I think that's the element of it. It might not be the worst film at the cinema I've seen at the cinema. It's definitely the most disappointing film I've seen at the cinema. Oh, it might be trumped by one actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, The Rise of the Skywalker.
Yeah.
Good God.
Is it Rise of the Skywalker or is it Rise of...
It's the Rise of Skywalker.
Skywalker.
Yeah, but it was the Rise of the Skywalker.
That around and it wouldn't make any more or less sense.
Oh my God.
Just like...
I have to say, no, do you know what? I'm not going to say it because this is not the right audience.
Go on, say it.
No, I was going to say, with my son, my 9-year-old son, I watched it with him, and I found the only way to get through it was to just divorce my brain from what was going on. I just had to sit there and just go, oh, it's a spaceship. Oh, it's a robot. Oh, there's a little alien. Like, and just not think about anything else. And like, oh, they're riding horses on the ship. You know, like, it just... And I had to. Oh, there's loads of shit. I just had to completely divorce.
That's the way to watch it, because I went to see
questions.
I went to see it at midnight on the opening night, and it was me and two of the guys from Cinema Continues, the other podcast that's just gone up on the SoundCloud. And the bit where Chewbacca dies in inverted commas, obviously didn't die. Yeah, the whole cinema was quiet, and there was three of us going. Fuck off.
I or you're just like, oh, it's his turn this time.
Oh, okay, sure. Yeah, okay, no worries then. Fine. Chewbacca's just died. Sure.
Kill Lando. Kill Lando.
No, he's just going to appear from nowhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, baby. Bazoo, bazoo.
He's just going to have done what no one could have done in the last 30 years
Yeah.
in the space of a week.
Who, Lando?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just going to get everyone back together. Yeah. Exactly,
Oh,
yeah.
and I just happen to live in this mobile thing in the exact place that you happen to be. It's all right. It's not like a galaxy is a big place or anything.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I love the fact that even in talk about Alien, we can still find time to shit on the Rise of
Shit on Rise of
Skywalker.
Skywalker. Okay, there's only two final points left that are probably quite obvious and ones that we've sort of ones I've spoken about almost kind of, at length, wax lyrical maybe.
Waffled, yeah.
Waffles, you might say. Yeah, absolutely. Firstly, it's the legacy of his betrayal. Ash's betrayal is obviously a major starting point for the big bad in the series, the company. He was put there to get the alien back. Crew's lives were considered to be expendable, and the company, Weyland-Yutani, as much as they try to paint themselves as building better worlds, they're not. They're money-grubbing corporation, and they see the aliens as an easy ticket to create a new bioweapon, and they will do anything to get hold of that. And through the first three films, that's what they do. That's what Ash's betrayal signifies in that first film. It becomes almost like the blueprint for what happens after that. And it also obviously has that recurring theme of who's really human, who are the real aliens, you know what I mean? Who are the real humans, who's the real monsters in these kind of things. That obviously happens. And then I guess the big one, which leads into a nice segue to kind of set up part 3, which we'll be looking at Ripley, is Ash's betrayal is really what sets up Ripley's defiance and resilience that becomes the major themes over the next couple of films as well, is her absolute distrust of the company, her distrust of androids, her turning from a warrant officer on a commercial vessel into a survivor. I think Aliens is very good in painting her as someone who grows into survival skills out of necessity. And it's only through her resilience and her willpower that she survives, and her ability to not even stay calm, because she doesn't. She's panicking at every moment, you can tell. It's chaos, it's fear. But her resilience and defiance, she will survive. She has the greatest parallel with the alien. She is a born survivor. And this is the film that birthed Ellen Ripley as an incredibly strong female character, as the last survivor of the Nostromo.
Yeah.
And we will look in more depth at Ripley and her developing character, and how it grows through this film, from almost a smug warrant officer, trying to sort of just take charge when she needs to the last survivor, steely nerves and hard attitude. We'll take a closer look at Ellen Ripley and her legacy in part 3 of Alien Deep Dive.
There you go. Nice one. So we'll be back next week, probably, to talk about part 3 of the Alien Deep Dive, which I'm thoroughly enjoying. Thank you very much, Tom. A lot of hard work's gone into this. A couple of quick comments. They prefer the term synthetic person, says Jack. Also, Nostromo is... She thought Nostromo was where Conrad Kurz was from. That is a nice little 40k joke there. Mm-hmm. Nostromo's where he's from, isn't it?
Yeah. Purely because someone at Games Workshop was like, no, mate, you're going to have to change at least one letter.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, everything about him is a walking, love letter to something anyway. Like Conrad Kurz is...
We're quite lucky he's not called John Batman.
Actually, very true.
I mean, he's the general from.
So I mean, if we're going to get into
Apocalypse Now,
who's Conrad wrote Heart of Darkness, right?
Yeah, Heart of Darkness.
Yeah. So that's his first name. Surname is after Conrad Kurz, not Conrad Kurz, Colonel Kurz, or General Kurz from Apocalypse Now. So it's an amalgamation of the two. Both of them like he was killed by an assassin called M. Shen as well. Obviously, in Apocalypse Now, he's killed by Michael Sheen. I always get this confused. Martin Sheen. Michael Sheen's the Welsh guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Michael Bean played Hicks.
Yeah. He played Hicks, and this
Mr.
all comes
Sheen
back to it.
is a Polish.
Yeah. And
Such a
the Rise of Skywalker wasn't polished at all. Yes. But Resident Evil 4 was. Anyway, just quickly, Tom, have you started watching the Masters of the Air yet?
That's on Apple TV, isn't it?
Yeah.
No, but I have a 3-month free subscription to Apple TV that's just been given by Samsung. So I noticed that was being advertised soon, and I will be watching it. Yes.
Okay, we'll talk about it at some point. But
Please.
at some point, I'll save it because it might get better. It might get better. Sorry, but I like the planes in it. Yeah, that's cool. Anyway, if you want to contact us, hit us up on Twitter. It's just at TMTOOH, or Facebook. Probably don't bother with that one, to be honest with you. Instagram at TMTOOH. But come join the Discord. It's the pin tweet on the Twitter. It's the bio on the Instagram. We've got an email somewhere that I've not checked in 4 years, so don't bother with that. Those are the best ways of contacting us. Unless you've got my phone number, that's actually a pretty good way of doing it if you've got that. So just do that. That's fine.
Tom Holland said something that I really love. And
What?
sorry, your phone number thing. He said, if you've got a problem with me, text me. If you don't have my number, then you don't know me well enough to have a problem with me. I love
Nice,
that.
yeah.
Such a great quote. Anyway, sorry, Dan, you carry on. You're doing great.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Yeah, with that, we were back with part 3 of our Alien Deep Dive next week. Thank you for listening / watching. Thank you all the handies out there that spent time with us this evening or whenever you're watching it. Don't be afraid to be a handy whenever you want to be a handy.
Everyone loves a handy.
Everyone loves a
loves a
handy.
handy.
You guys are the ultimate handies. Never forget that. Thank you very much for listening. And with that, Russ, cue the music.